Monarch.
Let's do it.
So, guys, what is it? 10 episodes? We saw 10 episodes of Monarch. And what do you guys think? Do you guys think it was something that was good for, I don't know, like, was it good in the sense where it was entertaining while being a prequel, I guess?
Midquill. I like to call it a midquill.
Okay, so a midquill. It's a midquill. What do you think?
Well, this was. I find it strange that it was on Apple TV Plus and not like Max or whatever. But I guess that's something that's not too important. But yeah, I mean, this was Apple's first like legacy character, like franchise character show, and not like a wholly original thing. And I think honestly, it ended up being one of their best shows on their service because yeah, I mean, this was like great beginning to end, and the effects. I mean, they poured their Apple bank account into the production of this show because I mean, it looked like a movie every scene. But yeah, I mean, it was a little bit slow during the middle of the season, but the beginning and especially the ending, I mean, I'm ready for more. If they're ready to give us more seasons of this show, I'm ready to learn more about Monarch. I'm ready to learn more about these characters. Which is also saying something because I think in the Monsterverse, the human element of the storytelling was never really strong, and it definitely was pretty strong here, if not the strongest of any Monsterverse story. So yeah, it left me wanting more, and I was definitely more than satisfied with how it turned out.
Pancakes, what do you think?
I have thoughts. Oh, this is the part I'm supposed to speak.
Yeah.
Speak your thoughts, yes.
But seriously, I really fucking love this show. This was great storytelling. It helped added context to an established movie verse. This is what we were supposed to do. This was what Marvel was supposed to do. Would help connecting the dots. While some shows achieved that goal, it dropped the ball on others. But this was an amazing show from start to finish. It was perfect. The monsters. It was the human element, the human storytelling in a world living with the Titans, living with the monsters, and the monsters appeared at the perfect time. Like Godzilla was perfectly used, perfectly timed. In the past when it flashed back to the 50s, and in the present day in 2015, and I'm still riding that high. I know it's not connected to this universe, but I think we're still riding high from when we saw Godzilla -1 back in December. But
oh yeah, and I mean that movie came out like around the same time that the show premiered. So
right, and
yeah.
Also just so everyone understands, this has nothing to do with
no, it doesn't.
-1 has nothing to do with Monarch. So this is basically just a TV show on all the movies that are done by Legendary and WB.
Yeah.
So yeah, everybody needs to.
But somehow Apple got like you mentioned earlier, somehow Apple got the TV rights.
It had to have been a matter of them, bidding the most money to get the rights to the show. Because I mean, I think Legendary looked at Apple like as, they're probably the only studio that's capable and willing to put as much money into this production quality as possible. Because again, I mean, just with how everything turned out in terms of visual quality, it was just the effects were just insane. So.
And if I'm not, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, but this also happened during COVID.
Did it?
When Legendary got screwed over by WB putting out Godzilla,
yes.
King of the
Godzilla vs. Kong on HBO Max.
Yeah. They put it straight to HBO Max instead of just leaving it on. And Legendary got pissed off about that because they're like, "Hey, we put in half the money. How can you sit there and make your own decision?"
It was this. I think early 21. It was the release at the same time in theaters and on streaming.
Right, and Legendary didn't want to do that. They just wanted straight to the movie theaters. So when it came to doing Monarch, they started shopping it around to other studios studios, but streaming services.
Yeah,
and channels, let's say.
And that definitely wasn't an issue that was unique to just them. I think that was like a pretty that was like an epidemic of its own during the pandemic. But of like studios screwing over their studios that way.
Yep.
But whoever was the streaming service showing this, it still was well connected to that universe. So that didn't really make a difference at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So let's talk about the show. Forget about the politics behind it. Let's see what.
Let's talk about the cast. Let's talk about the Russells.
Okay, look, realistically,
Starring
this show is starting Kurt Russell and
Wyatt Russell.
Wyatt
Russell,
Russell,
right?
His son.
The
Fake Captain America.
right, U.S. agent or whatever
Yeah.
they're calling him nowadays. I love every single time it was going from Kurt's to Wyatt's to Wyatt's to Kurt's, like when they were doing the flashbacks
Yeah,
and
yeah.
everything. I thought it was so. It got a little old after 10 episodes, but I think it was great. Like it showed you, like, bam, younger, bam, older, and it was something different.
Yeah, like it fit everything, like the story, like the puzzle pieces of the story together
Right.
pretty well. Like I feel like we didn't get too much of like either side of the timeline in this show, because it was like a 50-year difference when he was younger versus when present day, and so like by the time we got to like the finale, when all the characters from the past and future came together, it made perfect sense with everything, and it was a really good payoff in my opinion.
One thing they kept saying, essentially Kurt Russell's character, the older Shaw, they're like, oh, he looks good. Shouldn't this guy be in his 90s? I thought it was just a throwaway gag that they were just throwing in, because in real life, Kurt Russell is 72, not 92. But he still looks amazing. He still looks like he's in his early to mid 60s, like 10 years younger. So how they connected the dots with the younger Shaw, Wyatt's character, the Kurt, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
No, it is. It was almost Quantum Mania type levels of.
Oh, geez.
But you know what? They did that right.
Right.
It wasn't done wrong like the way the MCU has done it. They made it where it was like, hey, we've been here for X amount of time. When we get out, bam, it's.
They explain well why he lost his mind, how and why the powers that be that ran Monarch didn't want to work with him, and they stuffed him into that glorified jail, which they call the retirement home for disgruntled Monarch workers. I think the point of the show was the real monsters were the humans, the secret government agency. I know it's not an original concept, but you have very shady characters running that organization, and the real monster is Monarch themselves. How they conducted themselves, how they treated people, how they forced out pretty much a co-founder of the organization in Shaw. When he and to help, going back to how, that what I thought was originally a gag, how his age was like, oh, he looked good for his age. The fact that he was down there in the dimension with the Titans for 20 years when he thought it was only a few days. He went down there in 1962 on that rescue mission, and he came out on the other side, and 20 years has passed, and how time operates differently down there.
Yeah, which is, again, I mean, like kind of like you said, like something that we've definitely heard before.
But they did it right.
This was definitely very like quantum realm-ish. I think you mentioned Quantum Mania. It was kind of like that same thing, like, oh, like this is a realm, that's inside of our world that is, like not bound by the laws of time and space. And I think that part kind of weakened me a little bit with the story writing, but it still kind of worked just because it's the Monsterverse, just because it's Godzilla and all the rest of the Titans that we were getting in this show. But I think that was like the highlight, was just that it was a good balance of human element versus the Titan element. We didn't get too much of either. And we got the sprinkling teasings of Godzilla appearing throughout the show, and by the time like he makes his like grand debut, like you're ready and raring to go, and it's again like just a really great payoff.
And every to talk about Godzilla for a hot sec, the in every incarnation, it's Godzilla in the water coming out, and it doesn't get old. That's why it's in every incarnation, every movie we see. When they're in the desert, I believe they were in Algeria, and Kate and her brother finally see their dad out in the desert. But that imagery when Godzilla came out of the ground, just how that was done was so freaking cool.
Yeah, because
I've never
all the sand falling off of him instead of the whole waterfall.
I'm like, oh, I thought, it's probably just another Titan that.
It's exactly what I thought. I thought the same thing.
And then when you see that familiar scales, and I'm like, no way. And granted, he didn't fight another monster or attack the humans, but the fact that it was Godzilla himself coming out of the ground, not nowhere near water, that was so cool.
So I will say that scene was a highlight in the trailer. So I'm glad you guys actually forgot about the trailer, because that's actually a really good surprise now that I think of it.
Yeah.
But even though like that was like my most hyped scene going into the show. So like when it was happening, I was like, all right, let's go. Like Godzilla's here, baby. Let's see him. And and that roar and everything, and then he just like wreaks havoc. He takes down that helicopter and everything, and then he just kind of walks away like like he has all the time in the world. And I was just like, that's Godzilla, man. But we have a little friend flying around in this room right now, but not a Titan, thank God. But yeah, no, I mean, again, just like that those elements of the show just really kept you going throughout the entire season.
Also, another great Godzilla appearance in the finale when the people down in the portal where time doesn't operate like it does on Earth, and you see Godzilla walk through the portal, through the light, go after the monster that is stopping them from going and attacking them. And Godzilla, who's the human protector or the peacekeeper between the two worlds, has that one final savory moment. But like you said, Johnny, it just sprinkled in, put in at the right moments, let the human story, human element shine. Shaw sacrifices himself, but the way the show is
seemingly,
do you think
No, he's alive.
He's alive
and well.
Yeah.
He's alive and well.
Kurt Russell was so good in that role.
Let's be real here. He wasn't in it all the time, right?
No,
So-
perfect amount.
So a perfect amount. So even if he comes into the next season, he's not going to be there. He's not a main. He's a main character, but he's not a main character where he needs to be there all the time.
No.
The kids are the new generation of kids. Their kids are the ones that are important to the storyline.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think let's move on to them next.
Yeah.
I will say, like, I want to say that they were also pretty good, but I feel like they were probably the weakest element of the story in terms of the human side of it.
May was the best character.
May was really good. I wasn't a fan of Kate, played by Anna Sawai. I think her last name is. Excuse me if I'm butchering that name, but she was like the main like star of the show, besides Kurt Russell. But I felt like, I don't know, her character, I just wasn't like feeling it with her. Like
not as well.
Like I wasn't like feeling her motivations. I wasn't like I understood like what the hook with her story was, that like she and her brother had like a contentious relationship with their father, and then they realized they were brother and sister and all that stuff. But I felt like, I don't know, like she just was like rude to everybody. Like, I don't know. Like,
you have to
she wasn't like a likable character for some reason. I just can't put my finger on why.
You have to factor in the crap she went through, like how she's she during G-Day in the events of the 2014 Godzilla movie, she saw a whole bus full of kids fall off the bridge to their deaths.
Right. Yeah,
her father abandoned her. She found out her father had another family in Japan, so she's shell-shocked. Well, even before the event, she kind of had questionable moral things. Like, she told her girlfriend at the time that they're going to move in together, and then she shows that she's afraid of commitment. And then they cut to her apartment. You think she's packing to move in with her girlfriend, but then she ended up cheating on her. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, it was just, she had a lot of issues because of what she went through, but it just like, it resulted in a character that wasn't 100% likable. And if you're the star of the show, I feel like you got to have some sort of like rootable, like something that I want to root for.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I get that, but I think since you brought it up, the family in Japan, my least favorite character was Ren Wabi. I mean, that's the actor's name, but
the brother, the son?
Yeah, the brother. I wasn't a fan of him.
He was okay. Yeah.
I wasn't a
fan.
He
had his moments.
I felt like he was like the whiny little kid.
He was very tropey.
Yes.
Very. Like, especially when he had like that scene with his father when they were fighting and everything. I was like, oh, this is that, that classic like over dramatic Japanese acting, like old school. Like it was just like soap opera.
Right, but you got to give him credit though. This is his first time on camera.
Is it?
Yeah, that was the first time he's ever been on
That's his first major acting role?
Yeah, first major acting
then he did a really damn good job.
No, he did a good job.
For his first major role like that, good for him.
I'm not saying that I didn't like the actor. I didn't like the character that this actor played.
And that's what I was going to say before about Anna Sawai, I think her
Anna
name is.
Sawai, yeah.
Sawai, yeah. Is that like I wasn't sure if I didn't like her character because of like the way that the actress was portraying it, or because like the character was just written in a way that I didn't like it. But I think it's probably more so the character way of it. But yeah, definitely, I would say like on the weaker end of the writing and the story, in my opinion.
They made her definitely so cold at times, and she's like, "Oh, I'm on a mission, and I'll do this with or without you." Very persistent, but the way they portrayed her, wasn't always in the best light.
Yeah,
as she came across on screen.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But
what about that twist with their grandmother? Who was the expert scientist working with Bill Randa and the youngest Shaw back in the 50s. She disappeared. And I just had this gut feeling she was still alive.
Yeah, that's Oyoko Kudo.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she made Amiko.
Yeah, the fact that she only died that 57 days were passed and she was still stuck in 1959.
That is crazy when you really think about it. It's like, how long is that day there that you don't realize? I mean, maybe because you're there, you don't realize it. But when you come back, you're like, wait, I just lost, what did she lose, 50 years?
Well,
yeah, at least 50 plus years.
I mean,
That's crazy.
Are you guys not realizing though that she is just the Janet Pym of the story?
Oh, jeez.
If we're going
back to Quantumania.
Okay.
No, but the parallel is right there. Like,
Yes.
it's all right there.
The parallel is there. But the thing is, though, is that Janet Pym came back with white hair and everything, like she aged.
She did age, right?
On this one, this lady didn't age at all. She's still, obviously, because,
Well, when Shaw came back he started aging naturally. He aged 40 years from the early 80s to 2015. Right. Yeah, so that's why
he aged.
He aged when he came back. But I hope they expand on that more if we get a season 2. Why time is the way it is down in the Titans world.
If Marvel didn't do it, they're not going to do it. If they do it, I will be very proud of them. But I'm not expecting anything behind the logic of how that works.
Yeah, I'm with Johnny on this one.
And also with the Marvel connection, it doesn't help that the Russells are Marvel MCU alumni themselves, like you mentioned with Wyatt playing the crappy Captain America. He's coming back, and Kurt Russell was in Guardians 2.
Yeah,
Ego, yeah. And I think he came back and voiced the character in a What If episode, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's possible. So, overall, do you think that this show exceeded or sucked? In the sense of where we got this continuation to the storyline, like we got more, backstory, more forward-thinking story.
I don't think anything about this show sucked. Like, yeah, there are things that like worked better than others, but overall, this show definitely exceeded my expectations. And again, like this was a show that I think Apple definitely needed on its service if it wants to become like a really relevant, streaming service. So I'm down for another season or 2 of this. Hopefully it gets even better where I want even more seasons. But keep the train running with Monarch.
I remember, I think we were doing a Godzilla week, and we got the first trailer for the show, and we were raving about it. And so my expectations became pretty high. I think it definitely succeeded in living up to expectation. And I like a show like that. And with the ending, when they came back, they moved it along 2 years. So that's to get closer to the second Godzilla movie in this universe. And they have the connection to Khan when they ended up on Skull Island at the end, and we got that quick cameo from King Khan. So cool. And
John Goodman, like him just showed up.
But that was the first thing. So it's funny because when I first started watching this, I saw John Goodman, and I messaged them, and I was like, "Oh, I love watching John Goodman run." So I thought it was funny. But the fact that they're putting everything together is great. My only issue is that we're jumping around too much, and even us, we were trying to figure it out this afternoon, trying to figure out what time, where we're placing each of these movies or TV shows. And there's one show that I don't think any one of us saw, right? We didn't see Kong Skull Island on Netflix, right? The animated version.
Yeah, and I think
so. That's part of
people
the
barely
universe.
know that exists.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't know that, and it's because what you brought up before. It's fractured. I have to watch Kong Skull Island on Netflix. I have to watch Monarch on Apple TV. I have to watch everything else, all the other Godzilla and King Kongs on Max or Hulu. So it's like, guys, pick one. I understand streaming rights and everything like that, but
So on the Monarch, back on the show itself, with the jumping around, even in present day and the flashback to the 50s, there was even flashbacks within the flashbacks. So that got a little confusing at times. But once
Inception.
but once I caught on, it was just establishing the backstories of the individual characters. So
well, it needed to be said. That's why.
Yeah.
I mean, I think generally they did a good job establishing when in the timeline this show takes place. Like, obviously, like especially after like the flashback in the first episode of the first movie, like when Godzilla's attacking the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
Like we're clearly told, like, yes, this show takes place directly after that movie. So I don't think people will have a problem with knowing, like, oh, like when in the timeline does this take place, and is this a prequel or a sequel to something or whatever. I think it's pretty clearly established. I don't think we have people have to worry about that going in cold turkey. But yeah, and again, I think that was just another highlight of how they wrote the story. So.
Which you're right on that, because watching this show, you don't need to watch everything else. It's explained. Everything is there.
Yeah,
I think they put John Goodman in that first episode to establish that the younger version of the character is going to be in this show, and that John Goodman originated the character.
Right.
And they ended up playing back the video when his stepson, Kate's father, watches it back.
Right.
So that was a good thing to help connect it to the people that haven't seen all the movies. One thing I'm curious about, I kind of want to go back to that scene from the 2014 film when Godzilla walks through the Golden Gate Bridge and see if a bus is falling with the kids. Not that Kate herself's going to be there, or the Monarch agents are there documenting anything.
Oh, so you want to see if there's a real continuity there?
Yeah,
they're connecting the original movie with the TV show.
Or you see a bus falling off the bridge, or you see agents with guns and people with cameras.
I almost want to say yes, there was a school bus in that scene, but I gotta watch it again.
This movie was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to do a rewatch.
It really was 10 years ago. Holy crap.
Yeah. So other than that, that's it. You guys had anything else?
Yeah.
to say?
I totally recommend the show.
I highly recommend the show.
If you got Apple TV Plus for any reason, this is like one of the first shows you should watch, in my opinion. It's definitely their best so far.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I put this up there with like Ted Lasso and Foundation and Severance.
If you're a Godzilla fan, this show is definitely for you, no doubt about it.
Well, see, I'm glad you brought that up because it totally slipped my mind. Is it really a Godzilla show, or is it just a show that leads into Godzilla? Because Godzilla's barely in there.
Godzilla's a supporting character. It's a human story. Living among monsters.
What this show is, it's doing what Disney Plus wasn't able to do properly with Marvel with their TV shows. I feel like this show is a nice TV show addition that leads into the movies. The movies don't have to worry about this show. Maybe future movies will mention Monarch in some way more, but you don't need to watch the movies to get this show, and you don't need to watch this show in order to watch the movies. It's its own thing, but it connects. Like, it flows really well with the rest of the continuity, and I appreciate that.
Actually, I thought at one point I wanted to mention that I totally forgot about. You know what this show kind of reminded me of, but without having any universal connections. Of course, it's in my mind.
Give us.
We got to wrap it up soon anyway.
The HBO Max show that was successful based on the video game.
Last of Us.
Oh, Last of Us. Yeah. So. What I was gonna say was, it kind of reminded me, like, we see the world is not as destroyed, like society still exists, but you see people surviving, like they live among zombies and a virus, and on Monarch it's a world among monsters. So you see more of the corrupt human that run things and turning on each other and backstabbing and interaction and love. So it kind of reminded me in that aspect of where how people are living amongst destruction. Like society's still somewhat normal.
Well, it's a world that now they live with Titans, and they have to accept the fact that Titans exist in modern society. So it's like, but there's going to be corruption. There's going to be changes to governments.
My point of this comparison is that they allowed the human story to be the main focus and have the monsters be in the background and a foundation. But that's two great shows. I know that might not make sense in some minds, totally different universes.
No, but that's what made the show work.
Right.
That's absolutely what made the show work.
Well, that's the thing, though. They want the monsters for the movies because it's bigger budget.
Right.
And they want the human element for the TV show because it's a smaller budget. Right? So, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, everyone, let us know down low in the comments. Tell us what you guys think. Did you guys like it? Did you hate it? Do you think that, season 2 is going to be better? I don't know. You tell us.